Hey everyone, okay, we're back. This is part 4 of the Wealth Destroyers webinar series. So in this one, like we told you in the previous segments, we're going to be actually taking the theory, because theory at the end of the day is great, but unless you can actually put a practical application of that theory, it doesn't really have much relevance. So looking at the actual application of some of the things we've been talking about, we're going to go through all of that today and show you how the common way in which Americans are setting up their finances is literally going to be destroyed. But we're going to give you some solutions in there and actually show you some practical application so that you can start to put your finances in the position of not having to succumb to these wealth destroyers. So I'm excited. Brad, I know you love numbers. We tried to...
Fun part.
It's a really fun part, but as we were preparing for it, we realized that going through the calculations and going through all the spreadsheets and so forth is going to be really difficult. So we're going to go through a few, but we're going to basically back up everything that we state here, and we're going to put that information, those documents, on a website. And that website is our main website, which is paradigmlife.net, and it's going to be a /WD docs. And we're going to try to actually put it on the screen here right now, so the actual link will appear. So it's paradigmlife.net /WD, so Wealth Destroyers docs. So in there's going to be a few articles that back up some of the things that we say, some of the assumptions. In there is going to be our calculations themselves as well, right?
Yep.
We're going to put maybe a spreadsheet together just summarizing everything, so that you guys can see where we came up with the numbers. But it's exciting. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this webinar. So shall we get started? Anything else you want to add to it?
No, it's just like, and the other reason we started with the theory and everything is for a lot of people, when we started just making these claims and saying, hey, we can get all of this big result, and they're like, there's no way you could do that. And then we had to go back and try to backfill. So, well, yes, because of this and because of this and because of this. Now you've got a foundation that when we put these numbers up there, you'd be like, oh, yeah, okay, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. So if you've not seen the prior videos, we're going to reference a lot of the concepts and the assumptions we made there. So go make sure you watch them before. Don't be the type of person that Patrick is, where he's like, just show me the numbers. I don't care about anything else, right? Go back, watch all of that, because none of this will really make sense otherwise.
No, it's a good point. I mean, you have to have context, you have to have theory, or else the practical application doesn't make any sense, right? And then theory at the end of the day is baseless, foundationless, unless it has practical application.
Yep, and I've seen tons of other people put up similar sites to this or similar infographics or whatever it might be, and there's going to be somebody else's that you're going to see that their numbers will be better than ours.
Yep.
That's not the objective of today, is to say our numbers are better than anybody else's. All we're trying to do is then just say all the theory, everything that we've talked about, this is how it ends up coming out, so that you can get familiar. It's still going to be fairly basic, but there's going to be lots of people out there that are going to put up numbers, right? These types of returns or this type of income over this period of time. But you need the theory to be able to go back and say, well, that's a load of baloney.
Yep. Or if it could be leading, right? It could be average returns. It could not include the actual market history,
or fees, or adjusted for inflation, or any of those things. And so you'll now you'll be able to look at that and say, well, did he factor in this, or is this calculated into that?
Yeah.
And know really whether that it ends up being truthful or accurate.
Yeah, because we didn't talk about this in preparing, but it's a really good point, because basically you can make lots of different claims and say this is going to do this and this is going to do that. But unless you have like the theory behind it, the objective behind it, and also have the actual facts and how you came to those conclusions behind it, it's going to be very difficult to get away from this whole idea of subjectivism, this idea of bias. Yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to dispel that today.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a degree in economics, I have one in accounting, and as it was beat into my head over and over, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have the assumptions right, no model on the back end is going to give you the right answer if you've put the wrong inputs in. So we've given you the inputs to what is going to destroy everything that you're working to build.
Yep.
And so you need, as you look at the world, you can put those same inputs in and really see what reality is going to be like.
Yeah, and it's all of you that are listening, you all have a different financial situation, you're a different age, you have a different social standing, a financial standing. So we had to choose one, but based on what we're going to actually show you today, even though it's based on this one individual, the principles and the strategies that we're going to talk about really apply to everybody. And so we just had to choose one to give you an illustration, but they apply the same exact way and give the same exact benefit to all sorts of demographics or all sorts of people that fit within that spectrum.
Yep.
Okay, you ready to get going?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I think the best thing is to start with assumptions. So you're gonna get up here and talk about the assumptions associated with the finances, the rates of return, and the individual, right? And then also the wealth destroyers, right? The fee structure, the inflation structure, and the tax structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't have enough board to write everything down you say. I'll just kind of put
Just write it really small. Oh yeah, you guys have to watch it.
They have to look at it. It'll all be in the documents that you end up downloading.
Yeah, that's
so
okay.
I'll just kind of pick a few of the key points that we want to keep up there that we'll
All
kind
right.
of hit on at the end.
Yeah, so let's do assumptions first, document those, then we'll erase and start to get into results. Does that look good?
Yep.
Sound good? All right, so assumptions. So what's the first assumption? All right, we're going to use a 35-year-old. And we're going to assume that 35-year-old is accumulating money for, retirement for a future date. Okay, so 30 years out, right? All right, 30 years out.
So we're accumulating for 30 years, then a 20-year retirement.
Yeah, so once
right?
you hit 65, then a 20-year retirement. So your life expectancy will go to 85 years old, okay? So accumulate for 60, distribute and take income for 20.
Yep.
All right. What's the next assumption? We're going to use a 25% tax bracket, or do we want to get that far yet?
Yeah, we'll keep those static, so I'll write them over here.
Okay.
Taxes, 25%.
Yep, so 25%.
Inflation,
Yep.
3%.
Inflation
Fees.
3%. Fees. On the traditional strategy, which is mostly the 401k pre-tax contributions, so
Yeah.
the fees there, taxes there,
1%.
1% for fees, which is not that much, but given kind of what we want to accomplish, this works well. But typically for fees with most of these plans, it's a lot higher.
Yeah, and the document's going to lay that out. If anyone thinks they're paying less than 1, we're going to show you how you're probably paying 3 times 1%.
Yep.
But we're still going to use 1%.
Cool. And that document is by a really famous statistician and contributor to Forbes, and he is, a brainiac. So he basically spells out in a pretty long document exactly how all that works.
Yep.
Okay, let's do contribution amount. So the savings amount is going to be $20,000 before tax. Okay, and that would be $15,000 after if you're dealing with the 25% tax bracket.
Yep.
Okay. What else are we missing?
What we're going to use, because he's going to put this into, most people are taking their retirement accounts, or even if they're not doing this in a 401k or an IRA or a Roth or a brokerage account,
Yeah.
they're using a benchmark of the market
Got it.
as to what they expect everything to grow at.
Okay.
Right? So our benchmark is, did we use the Dow or the S&P?
Dow.
Dow.
Yeah, we use the Dow.
From
1984
84 to 13.
to 2013. And that rate of return, the average rate of return was literally 9.9%. And we're actually going to show that in one of the calculations. Okay.
So we've got that as our benchmark.
And then Monte Carlo. Let's discuss Monte Carlo quick.
Okay.
So the Monte Carlo simulation or calculation, it's referred to a few different ways. So Monte Carlo refers to obviously gambling, right? Because Monte Carlo. But the Monte Carlo in this regard is dealing with probabilities, because gambling is about probabilities, right? It's about your odds. So this Monte Carlo simulation is basically how much can you take out of a portfolio over the course of time without running out of money. And a lot of retirees right now are focused on this because of how imbalanced markets are and how low yields are on like bonds. So basically the Monte Carlo distribution rate is at less than 4% right now, okay, but we're gonna use 4%. And what it means is that over the course of this 20-year distribution, it is the percentage you can take from your portfolio every single year without running out of money.
Yeah, so it's not a rate of return, because
Nope.
obviously the market has averaged a higher rate of return, but it's the problem you have to solve in retirement is you don't know how long you're going to live, and you don't know when the market's going to go up and when it's going to go down.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got an uneven flow of the market that we have to kind of take the hills and push them into the valleys.
Mm-hmm.
So just because the market did 10% doesn't mean you can take 10%, because next year it might lose 5%. You've got to sort of average that impact out. So this gives you to not outlive your money and not be able to deal with that variability. You can take 4% per year and manage all of that risk.
Got it. Okay. Hopefully that's well said. And then there's some documents that'll be in this folder that will talk more in detail about what the Monte Carlo simulation is. All right. What other assumptions do we need to put on there?
I think we got them for the starting out. That's what we're looking at.
Okay. Bang.
Results?
Assumptions. Take a snapshot in your mind, and now we're going to a race. And now we're going to get into the common traditional American homemade strategy. So we're going to use a kind of a pre-tax vehicle. The most common pre-tax vehicle is a 401k, and we've discussed that these vehicles are all subject to the wealth destroyers. So we're going to actually put into practice. And I know we've done some calculations already. So traditional. Okay, so there you go. So we've done some calculations already. This is going to be just to create the context or create the basis for what we are going to show as a potential fix or a potential solution to these issues. So income, taxes. All right, so let's do, what do we want to do first? Do you want to show the accumulation?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go in onto my computer. I'm gonna show the accumulation using the assumptions that we just mapped out and the amount of money that will be left at retirement.
Perfect.
Okay? All right. All right, so we're going to put in some of these assumptions here. So the 30 years is going to represent the accumulation phase, and we'll go 1984 to 2013. Okay, now we need to plug in the market history. So this is my little market history module. So it shows from 1984 until 2013. This is basically what the Dow did. A nice kind of round number of 9.99%. So earnings rate. All right, beautiful. And then the contribution is going to be $20,000 per year. So without any fees, the accumulated balance is going to be about $2.4 million. Now we put in there a fee structure of, let's say, 1%. That's going to leave us with about 1.985. Now what we want to do is maybe round up to $1 million. So let's go 0.9 in there. Actually, no, let's just keep it at 1, and we'll just round up the end balance at about 2 million to make the Monte Carlo a little bit easier to understand. So 1.985 million, you're going to see that right there, is basically the end result that if in 2013 you reach the age of 65, now you're going to use the Monte Carlo simulation to distribute money. Now, one thing to point out here, which we're going to probably show in the end, is the amount of fees that are paid. So the amount of fees is basically on the overall balance, so they're really small in the beginning, okay, but looking at the end, they're pretty high. So the total fees you're going to pay over the course of this 30 years is going to be $255,000, almost $256,000. All right, so let's go back to the whiteboard and start to look at what that income is. So
I plug the fees in here.
Put the fees in there.
$255,000.
Got it. So the end balance. Let's just put the end balance in there.
So it's $2 million.
$2 million, and if you use Monte Carlo, which is 0.04 or 0.04, right?
Not 40%, right?
Well, yeah. If you use 40%, you run out of money in
2 years.
So a 4% is going to give you $80,000. Okay. Now after tax, that is 60, because remember, you're deferring the taxes. Okay, you're contributing pre-tax, and then you're deferring the tax until you withdraw, and you are taxed on 100% of what you take out. So that would be a $60,000 post, so $60,000 per year, and you wind up with a positive portfolio balance at the age of 85 of $1. So the definition of the Monte Carlo positive portfolio balance is $1.
Yep. That's all that they can guarantee you. It may be more than that, but the guarantee or the projection works as long as you have $1 left.
Perfect. So taxes, so the way in which we'll calculate taxes is essentially the $20,000 per year times the 20 years of distribution.
So before we do that, though, let's
Okay.
look at what we saved in taxes, because at least in theory, the 401k is supposed to save
Yep,
us
good point.
income taxes,
Good
right?
point.
So we were putting in, if you remember on the results, we were putting in $20,000 a year,
Yep.
which means we were saving $5,000 in income taxes.
Per
we
year.
did that per year. We did that for 30 years.
Okay.
So that's $150,000, right? Is what we saved in taxes. And your accountant every year is circling the bottom of your taxes and saying, look how good I am. Save you $5,000 in taxes every year. This is the part he's not showing you, okay? Or he's not calculating with you, is what you just walked through and what he paid. So you're paying now $20,000 a year in taxes for 20 years,
So that's
right?
$400,000.
So did we save taxes with this?
No, you didn't. And that's the thing, is the accountant is probably retired or dead by that time, so
Yep.
he's no longer accountable. But yeah, you're giving up $5,000 a year. That's the deal. You're not having to pay that, which is great, but you are setting yourself up for a $200,000 or a $400,000 tax bill.
And that's if taxes are
Stay the same.
the same as they are now.
And that's another risk, but we'll address that toward the end.
Yep.
Okay, and the estate winds up at $1. So looking at this, taxes could go up and down. Obviously, we've talked about that throughout the Wealth Destroyers. We have a massive government issue right now with the amount of unfunded liabilities, the amount of debt that we carry, which is in the tens of trillions. Unfunded liabilities put it into the hundreds of trillions of dollars. The only way in which the government can essentially take care of that is by raising taxes or by printing money, which creates inflation. So there's taxes, there's a risk there. Inflation, right now it's at 3%. If money continues to get printed, there's going to be more water diluting the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. So that could potentially go up. And then fees, we used a very conservative fee structure in the document that we're going to put into this box or this online folder. Fees are a lot higher than that. So there is still some risk associated with this outcome. But what we wanted to do is show what we do and show a potential solution to this that's very easy to incorporate, and how it deals with the three destroyers of wealth. And then we'll talk about the risk associated with it versus the risk associated with the traditional results.
Yep.
Make sense?
Last thing we didn't outline was the impact of inflation here, right? Because you're getting
that's a good point.
You're
Yep.
getting $60,000 not today, but 30 years from now.
Yep.
So because that's a huge destroyer of our wealth.
Yes.
So what does this end up in? Spendable income.
Great point. And it's not just this is at
purchasing
age
power.
65.
Right.
It continues to decline. Okay, but at age 65, it was, I think we calculated like a little over $24,000.
Yep. So that's your purchasing power.
Yep. So basically,
dollars.
what $24,000 buys today is what $60,000 will buy in the future.
Yep.
Right.
So that's your lifestyle amount if everything were in today's dollar.
After tax.
Yep.
All right. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and erase this, and then we'll get into a potential solution.
Awesome.
This might be a short webinar today. All right, so we're still going to use, we'll still use kind of this, and we may have to erase it. But let's talk about, just the general details of our strategy. So we use a uniquely set up, and I want to emphasize those words, but a uniquely set up insurance policy that is designed for accumulation. So most insurance is designed for coverage. We design it for accumulation. So what we did is we basically it's an after-tax contribution. So you can't contribute 20 because if you were contributing 20 before and you are in the same type of income, same sort of financial situation, then you're gonna have to pay taxes on that. So 25% tax bracket would make it $15,000 per year. Okay. Now the growth is tax-free, so no taxes on it.
Yep.
The withdrawal and distribution, 100% tax-free. Now it's not a Roth IRA. It's a uniquely designed insurance policy. So let's talk about what it's going to grow to over the course of 30 years. Now, this is something that may surprise you. It's only growing to $1 million.
Half.
So it's half of what the 401k would grow to. One half.
Yep.
So you're probably saying, if that's where we stopped, it's like, that sucks.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and if your advisor saw this, again, most advisors aren't factoring in all of the wealth destroyers. So they're going to look at this and say, 1 million is less than 2 million, so ta-da, you ought to come over here and go with me. Which is, again, why we spent 3 meetings on the theory, so that you understand that this $1 million is a very different number than the $2 million that's in your 401k account because of what it's exposed to.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about what that, it mainly has to do with taxes. Okay, we're also going to talk about some inflation. Right, so what we did is we calculated, all right, if we were to take the same amount of net income, which is going to be all tax-free, it's going to be $60,000. Now, it's the same 60, equaling what 24,000 would buy today. We just wanted to show the exact same thing. But not only do you get $60,000 over the course of 20 years, you also will you'll leave behind. We can put the estate value on you'll leave behind $550,000 more. So you probably could take a little bit more than the 60 if you needed to. But if you took the 60, 100% tax free, right, which means that the IRS, the government, only got $150,000.
Yep.
Right.
And that's total. That's it, because there's no more taxes coming out on the back end.
Nope. There's no accumulated taxes. There's no taxes on the distribution either. And then you leave behind $550,000. So we wanted to show just kind of the general income idea, right?
Yep.
And why $1 million can actually do a lot more than $2 million, which is very, very interesting.
Now, if you heard the word life insurance policy and cringed, you're like I was when I first heard about this, and what most people are, and the thing they say is, man, aren't those really, really, really expensive, right? So we can't, because a life insurance policy doesn't charge fees the same way a brokerage account does. The calculator won't show this. But the fee structure over the life of a life insurance policy sits at about 0.15% in total fees.
0.15, which would be 0.0015. But yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, I put the percent sign.
Yep. Sorry.
0.
Good catch.
0.15%,
awesome.
which came out to be over the life of the contribution of this policy, just a little more than $18,000 in fees.
But you got to explain where that 0.15 comes from. We didn't just come up with that number randomly,
right?
But who came up with that number?
So there, and in the documents, this research result, whatever you want to call it, article will be there. But an independent investment group newsletter has went back in and researched this to figure it out. And we like this group because they don't take anything at face value. They don't have an opinion, and they said, well, let's take a look. And let's go in and reverse engineer and calculate this and meet with actuaries and do all this. And this is where it comes to on a 35-year-old from 35 to 85, that fee structure, if it were charged the same way a brokerage account was charged,
or mutual fund.
or a mutual fund, it would come out to be about
0.15%.
And you're paying somewhere around a total of about $18,000 in fees. Now, this isn't every life insurance policy. This is the
one we're representing right
the
here.
one that we look at.
And all this, so the $1 million that it accumulates to, as well as the $60,000 of income, this is net of everything. Correct. This is net of those fees.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now let's talk about the inflation idea.
Right.
Actually, let's hit on taxes quick, and then we'll talk about the inflation idea, and then. Yeah, so it still equals 24. So we still have an issue. But taxes, $150,000. Again, it's the accumulated, the money that you're putting in there, accumulating and contributing every single year. You're only paying, after tax contribution. So it's $5,000 times 30 years, so $150,000.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about inflation briefly, because this is where we really start to make some separation. Because this is essentially the same as
place.
before.
Yeah.
You pay less fees. You have tax-free, less taxes. You give away a better estate, so you're starting to get into combating these wealth destroyers.
Well, and even here, even if we could do nothing more here, most of our clients would sign up just for this right here.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not taking any market risk. They're not worrying if the market's going to crash the year before they
Not
retire.
taking tax risk.
They're not taking any tax risk. They know that they're locked in there, and they don't have to be meeting with people and worrying about it and watching CNN Money.
Yep.
Like that, it's just all done. It's taken care of. So this, even right here, I mean, it's kind of that idea of, if you're going to get to the same place, do you want to go complicated or easy? And we'll take the easy route as long as we get to the same place.
Or the less risky route.
Yeah. So this is from just a quality of life standpoint, this is way better than what we'd have had otherwise. But we don't want just that. We want you in a better lifestyle position as well.
Okay. So inflation. So obviously inflation is your dollars will dilute in value as far as their purchasing power. So let's talk about generally. There's other ways, but we're going to talk about just two general ways in which this combats inflation. So looking at this type of policy, this type of financial vehicle, it has been around for a couple hundred years. And if you actually go back and look at its performance, which is not tied to the market, okay, it's tied more to the success of the insurance company. If you look at the ebb and flow of the market, ebb and flow of interest rates, ebb and flow of inflation, this the growth always will fluctuate with those trends. So if inflation is higher, if interest rates start to go up, this will also perform better. Okay, but right now, looking at 2000 and we're still in 2015, 2015, it is performing basically at the lowest level ever. So these assumptions right here are basically their performance as if it was a worst case scenario pretty much.
Yeah, but with the market, when we did the projections based on that, we went and looked back over the last 30 years. And over the last 30 years, we've seen inflation, we've seen higher interest rates, lower interest rates. So we're sort of taking all that into consideration. But with the insurance policy, we're not. We're just using a snapshot in time right now, what it's doing right now. So that's, and we prefer to do this because we want to play this side conservative.
Yep.
But that's the point that we're making, is if we were to go back and take into the actual history of the life insurance policy, this would be significantly better, and it would offset a lot of the degradation that inflation wields against
Love
us.
it. So that's the one thing. That's one, and if it was this would still be pretty attractive.
I still like it.
And a really good alternative. But what we're about to explain next is really where this sets itself apart and really starts to work into combating this inflation idea.
Yep.
So this type of policy, we've chosen specific companies that offer this type of financial product and allow us to set it up the way that we do. But each of these companies guarantee the person that purchases one of these that they will lend them money, they will give them a line of credit up against the entire amount of money that's accumulating. And that line of credit isn't, well, if you have good credit, we'll give it to you, or if you have a job, we'll give it to you. They will basically give you this line of credit guaranteed whether you have a job, whether you have the worst credit score in the world, because it's collateralized to this accumulated vehicle, the money that's accumulating inside of it. So this loan, it's a double-edged sword, right? When you give a big, if you were to give a big credit card to your teenager, a $20,000 limit on a credit card to your teenager, most people know what's going to happen, right? So a lot of the strategy that we talk about and then we provide education on is how to properly use this incredible benefit. And we're just going to explain one way in which we're going to use it today. But the use of this line of credit, if you will, allows you to use the money right now. Because this accumulates, it grows, okay? It's just, all of this works independent of the loan.
Right.
Okay? So it's going to accumulate, it's going to earn interest, it's going to earn its dividend, whether you use this feature or not.
Yep.
But this feature is available in every single year. It's available all the time, which means you can use this loan feature today and purchase something today. And it could be an asset that will rise with inflation over time.
Yep.
Which is, if people believe this, right, there's one of two outcomes, right? They're going to continue to do what they're doing and hope this is not true. Or they're going to make changes. They're going to buy maybe metal. They're going to buy real estate. They're going to use leverage, do what we've told them to do. But now this vehicle allows you to not only do that, okay, but allow you to continue to accumulate money inside of this vehicle at the same time.
Yeah, so as a quick review, if you watch the inflation video, I think it was the part 2 of this, we talked about 2 ways to combat inflation. One of them was the traditional thinking, which is buy something that moves with inflation. It was a hedge, right? And we didn't like that approach as much. Not that we use it to an extent, but it shouldn't be our primary strategy, because that only keeps you where you are. It doesn't actually accelerate you. It doesn't really put you in a better position. It just preserves what you have.
Exactly.
And the other solution, if you recall, was leverage, right? Was utilization, was having the money actively work for you. And if we could leverage our way into an asset that produced income and grew with inflation, now we can actually get out and get ahead of it. So what the policy is allowing us to do, in essence, is taking this $15,000 contribution and setting it on a path to accomplish all of this, while at the same time allowing you to leverage that into another asset, and now we're getting ahead of it rather than just keeping up.
Great point. That's really well said. I did not do a good job at explaining my point of view, but that's exactly what this is going to allow you to do. And so, using this loan provision, using this line of credit, you can literally use it for anything. The insurance company doesn't even ask what you're going to use it for. But what we've decided to do, and again, a lot of this is particular to this person's scenario. To you, it may be totally different, but again, it's just an example, and it's one example, it's one transaction. So what we decided to do is take this loan provision and use some of the money to put as a down payment on a piece of real estate. So we'll talk about the details of the real estate first. Let's just say it's a duplex, and we're going to do $200,000 purchase price. Sorry. Yep. So a duplex that is worth $200,000. That's what you buy it for. These days, to acquire a mortgage, especially an investment property mortgage, you have to have decent credit. You have to have employment and so forth. But you have to also put down money. They're not going to give you all of the money for it. So the traditional down payment is around 20 to 25%. We're going to use $40,000 is what you have to come out of pocket to put into this type of property or this type of asset. So you essentially acquire a $200,000 asset for $40,000 because you're using bank money, you're using leverage to pay for the other part.
And you're actually getting it with no money down because you're borrowing it against the life insurance policy. So income's $15,000. We figured safely you'd want to wait maybe 5 years because you'll have more than 40 accumulated within 5 years. And then we're going to leverage that into the duplex. So we have this and now in addition we have this for all the same contribution. So just to be really clear, you're not coming up with an additional $40,000 above this contribution.
Got it. Okay, so essentially you're taking out a $160,000 mortgage. Usually these type of mortgages, they range anywhere from 20 to 30-year mortgages. So you're going to take on that mortgage and hopefully have it all paid off by the time that you retire. So that's the idea.
Yeah, 30-year mortgage, or 20, I guess we figured paying the mortgage off over 25 years and paying back your policy loan, the $40,000. We could pay all that back within 25 years and have still enough capital or cash flow on a monthly basis to fix up the property and keep it in good working order so that this is a well-performing property once we enter retirement. Okay. But we're not taking any income off of this, right? We're treating this like a 401k account, right? Okay. So all the cash flow that comes off the property, we're reinvesting back into it. We're paying the policy off.
You pay the policy loan off first, and then
paying the bank off,
and then the net will allow you, because you're going to eventually pay the bank off. You're eventually going to pay the policy loan off, but it's also to continue to improve the property, right? Because this is an asset that is going to be part of your income, right, into retirement. So if that is the case, you want to make sure that when you're in retirement, you have the least amount of expenses possible. So another part of the net income associated with this is going to go to, save up to pay for the roof, make sure the plumbing is up to date, make sure the electric is up to date, make sure the house is in good order so that when you do get into retirement, you do not have major expenses because that will reduce your income.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about a few other parts of this duplex. So the income. So the rental income on a duplex, we're going to use $2,000 per month.
So $1,000 each side.
So $1,000 each side. And then we're going to use operating expenses, which is your taxes and your insurance, any utilities that you pay, management fees of $750. Okay, and we're going to talk about why this is important in a second. Okay, so those are the assumptions. Now let's go to the future assumptions.
Yep.
Okay, so future assumptions. Let's look at we're basically going to have an increase in the property value. So at 30 years, it's going to be a certain value. But really, the true value is going to be, when you pass it on. Because regardless of the value, you're using this for income. So you're not going to really exercise the value until 50 years down the road, which is the 30 years of accumulation and then 20 years. So around the 50-year mark at 85. So it'd be worth about $900,000 at that point.
So we now have a combined estate here of 1.45 million. Right?
Yep. All right. So let's talk about the income at that point. So the income, or do you want to talk about?
Let's just go straight to net cash flow. So we're going to increase the income at an inflation rate
of 3%.
And the operating expenses.
Yep.
And then now, because we're switching to then drawing income from it, our bank loan is paid back. All we have to do is now just float the operating expenses, and the rest we get to pocket. So what is that pocket amount total on an annual basis?
So I think it was the net was it was like 48.55 minus 1,200 or 1,300. What was the net? It was about $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year.
Yep. So about another. So up here we had $60,000 gross before factoring in inflation. With this, we're figuring about $36,000
of net income that will come off of this in retirement.
Yep.
Okay. And that is net of expenses, net of everything. Because what we did is we factored in the operating expenses right here, that those would also go up, right? Because your taxes are going to go up, your insurance is going to go up, your management fees are going to go up. But your income is going to go up as well. Rental incomes traditionally have risen with inflation.
Well, and the great thing about it is by the time you're ready to actually start taking income, you've now paid back the bank and you've paid back your policy loan. So early on, a lot of that money is going right out the door to somebody else. But now this is a cash cow asset, free and clear, just dumping money into your bank account every month.
Absolutely. All right. So what else are we missing? I think that's it.
I think we've got it. Okay. So our total end result here is, if we combine our income numbers, we've got $96,000 of income.
And then 1.4 million
in the estate
goes to the estate. Now this is just one. This is just one property. All right, this is one property done once. You could, of course, use this loan provision, use this line of credit as often as you want, and it's going to accomplish something very, very similar if it has the criteria that ebbs and flows with inflation.
Yeah, and we didn't want to show multiple examples because we didn't want you to get hung up on the example. Right? We just wanted to show the impact that if we can reduce our expenses here, if we can minimize our taxes here, and then get ahead of inflation through utilization, through leverage.
Because we have access to all the capital that's growing.
Even if we do that on a very small scale, a very small adjustment here, what do we do? I mean, we increase our income by almost 50%, and an infinite return on our estate.
Yeah.
Because we went from $1
to $1.45 million.
$1.5 million.
Which means it's like you could sell. There's so many options that you'll have in the future when you're in retirement. You can sell the duplex. Right. You could take maybe a little bit more money and income from the policy. I mean, there's a lot of options that you have. But again, trying to go as close to even as possible with the traditional strategy. That was our intention.
Yep.
All right. So looking at one thing that we'll end with. Like we said, all the documents that back this up are in this specific folder, and so you can kind of go and check where we're coming up with these numbers. The end result is the strategies, the tools, the knowledge, and the education we provide with all of our clients, and we have several thousand clients right now. They basically all experience the same thing. They have essentially a couple of routes they can take when it comes to their financial future and their well-being in their financial future. One is the traditional strategy. Hopefully we've shown you that traditional strategy works better for the IRS and Wall Street than it does for the average American. It also is subject to all of the wealth destroyers, probably the vehicle that is most subject to it. And then second, a viable solution so that you can essentially look at this new path and see if that new path is worth entertaining. And that's essentially what we do as a profession is we set up online resources, we set up articles and webinars like this one to teach people, because this is a very different type of strategy. It's unconventional, but that's why it works so well. and looking at, you know, the resources that you would have available. Working with us, we do all of our consultations through video, through webinars, so you don't have to go anywhere. You can learn about this in the comfort of your own home. Our consultations at this point are absolutely free, so there's no commitment associated with it. So we're going to put some contact information that's in this presentation, and also be in the email. There'll be a follow-up to this, so that if you are interested, if you want to sit down and look at your specific numbers, then you can schedule that type of webinar with one of our strategists, and they can plug in your numbers and show you, if you were to do this, that, or the other, where you would wind up versus where you would wind up with the traditional approach, which is probably what you're doing right now. Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Gibb?
No, I just get, it's like Patrick said, it's more about your strategy than anything. Mm-hmm. It really has nothing to do with the product, or everybody has to fit into a box and we're just going to roll it out on an assembly line. What you've got to get straight, and the whole point of this 4 webinar series that we went through was to get you educated and to get you thinking differently. And most of our clients are, before they came to us, they were already aware that something was off, that something they were doing just wasn't going to result the way they wanted to. Mm-hmm. So if you're feeling that way and you're wanting to know what's different, or what you can do to make a change, no matter what point you're at. I've had clients all the way from their early 20s all the way out to their mid 70s, to where we've been able to set up a strategy to some degree or another, work against these 3 wealth destroyers and improve their position. But it takes oftentimes it takes understanding the principles, which are there now, and then it's getting with somebody that can walk through and apply them, and be able to help you implement them.
Cool. Well said. All right, everyone. It's been awesome to do this webinar series, and we're grateful that you've participated. Grateful that you've gotten to this point, and thank you so much. Hope you guys have learned something. But that's it. Brad, any final words?
Let's go crush it.
Okay, sounds good. We wish you the best of luck with everything, and hopefully you'll look into some of our education online. Thanks.